Good morning, Barbados, and Happy New Year to you all. We are coming to you from Ilara Court, where Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Amor Motley, will address the country. She has just returned from State House and is now ready to speak on a number of issues. We apologize for the delay, but that would have been as a result of the interaction with the State House. Prime Minister?
Thank you very much, Roy. Fellow Barbadians at home and abroad, and friends of Barbados, who through your friendship and contributions add to the richness and the diversity that make up the Barbados that we know and love. I greet you at the start of 2024 with a deep sense of hope. Mine is the kind of hope that each of us feels at the start of a new year, with its dual potential of promise and uncertainty. It is the kind of hope that we can feel collectively as a nation when we look back at our accomplishments of the last year, even in the midst of the struggle and the global challenges which affected national and international well-being. It is in recognition of the promise and potential which a new year holds that we make resolutions and we plan for the year ahead. Each of us knows it. We do so conscious that all of the elements of happiness and delivering a good year are not necessarily within our control, but we do have the capacity to positively shape much of what happens as we must, and always, we must find the determination to do so. Indeed, it is on the issue of how we will approach 2024 that I address this country at the start of this new year. Despite the uncertainty of the global situation that I just mentioned, Barbados has ended the year on a high note. Jobs continue to open up and new opportunities are being created. Thousands of Barbadians have been and continue to be trained for existing and indeed new jobs that are emerging from the projects that are coming on stream in construction, in the tourism sector, and in the digital sector globally and locally. The measures engaged by the government brought about a fall in inflation in August 2023, where it dropped to 4.4%, down from an initial 6.3% at the beginning of the year. And this, my friends, is contrasted to the 13.9% average inflation across Latin America and the Caribbean. Our food crop production grew by 24.3%, taking us closer to reducing the food import bill and to achieving food and nutrition security and sovereignty, which is our clear 2030 goal. With new pushes in marketing and increased airlift, tourism arrivals shot upward. Visitors from the United Kingdom continue to grow at a pace surpassing pre-pandemic levels. And our visitors from the USA and Canada this last year came roughly to 87% of pre-pandemic levels. But I don't need to tell you that if you walk anywhere in Barbados, the place is full of visitors. Our national insurance scheme was put on a sound footing to ensure its sustainability and the availability to benefit all Barbadians into the future. And this was no small feat when one considers and bears in mind that Barbados' national insurance scheme carries the third highest benefits in the region, although having one of the smallest populations to support it. The National Insurance Scheme Unemployment Fund has also been fully recapitalized. And indeed, the sustainability of the public sector pension scheme has been reinforced. Public safety, generally, was enhanced in 2023. In particular, the number of murders were less than half of what they were in 2022, indeed from 43 to 21. The efforts of the Barbados Police Service, coupled with government social interventions and crime prevention program, are evidently taking root. I thank the Commissioner of Police, the members of the Barbados Police Service, the members of the government's crime prevention team in the Office of the Attorney General, and those citizens and institutions who are working with both of them for their sterling effort, of which the whole country can truly be proud. We are not, my friends, yet out of the woods, but we are moving in the right direction. Barbados' recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic continued to be broad-based, with growth in our economy estimated at 4.4% in the 2023 year. This growth performance was underpinned by the preservation of economic stability after the pandemic, with healthy foreign reserves Indeed, gross international reserves stood at 2.989 billion, or just above 31 weeks of import cover. And let me also deal with the red flag of fear that is used perpetually by others. Our public debt, my friends. Our public debt is lower now than when this government came to office in 2018. In fact, the debt to GDP ratio continued to fall, and at the end of December, a few days ago, debt stood at 114.9%, lower than it has, as I said, at any time since we have come to office in 2018. Thank God we are getting this problem of a high debt to GDP ratio behind us and continue on that downward trajectory while doing all of the things that we are doing. In addition, we have met all of the economic markers that we need to meet for the strengthening of our BERT program, and the international rating agencies are giving Barbados and our economic performance high marks. Our economy is no longer marked by downgrades, but by positive indicators. And investor confidence from all quarters can be seen. As we know, self-praise is no praise, so I don't want you to listen to me. What matters is not talk, not a bag of words, but action. You only have to look and see that the investments are being made in this country, and that should tell you where confidence lies. This is the platform, therefore, my friends, on which we go into 2024. Sound, sustainable, and growing. But as usual, I'll ask you the question, is everything perfect? No, not at all. But my commitment to you and the commitment of this government to you, the one that you elected, that we will continue to work with all people of goodwill to ensure that we fix those things which remain of concern or which need improvement. And we will work to create or increase competitive advantage where we have made gains in what we do well, and in those things for which we have had a measure of success, we will continue to work hard to ensure that we can improve. What these last 5 years have reminded us is that Barbadians excel and achieve when we work towards common national goals. I say so all the time. We did it together to save our dollar. We did it together to get through the COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, we also learned at the same time that our economy had a higher measure of resilience than many may have believed. So we understand that. But my friends, unless we get it right, building enhanced national resilience, increasing our capacity to withstand shock and weather crises of all types, be they social, economic, or environmental, Barbados will be perpetually playing catch-up. And that is why we have not only to fix the current things, but to look at transformation. The overall goal of my administration is therefore to empower Barbadians by creating opportunities that generate wealth and well-being for generations. Cash is not wealth, you and I know that. Building social and environmental resilience, entrenching economic sustainability, and protecting the natural resource base on which our blue and green economy rests, our land and our sea. Above all else, this government must be transformative. And that is the promise we gave you in 2018 and 2022. Transformative of a society which must shake free of the shackles of slavery and colonialism. Transformative of an economy that must now serve all citizens where previously it served only the interests of a few. And make no mistake about it, if you're going to alter the status quo, some people who could preserve and depend on the status quo will be unhappy. Transformative of an education system that served us well, but frankly, was focused on the creation of an educated elite and making vassals out of the working class. That was the British legacy to us. Transformative in putting in place climate-proof infrastructure on which we can carry the country into the future. And we need to do it now, as we have seen in the last year. Transformative in ensuring that levels of primary and tertiary health care, as well as the quality of service and delivery of our national institutions, is unsurpassed. Transformative in fostering a competitive, efficient, productive first-class public service and state-owned enterprises that are partners in the national development process, and we are deep in the weeds in trying to do that. Transformative in incentivizing the local private sector to be truly entrepreneurial and to see not just Barbados, but the world as their marketplace. Transformative in creating equitable and fair conditions for our workers who make the difference, as we learned in COVID, to whether we function or don't function as a society. Transformative in working together as a family to eliminate poverty from our landscape while empowering all citizens to understand their purpose and mission, their rights and responsibilities. Those 4 out of 5 who are above the poverty line can lift the one who is below. And transformative, my friends, in the opportunities and futures we must deliver for our young people, encouraging them to stay at home in this country and to use their training, their creative imagination, and their God-given talents to join with us in building the future Barbados. Indeed, working together towards Mission Barbados by 2030. My friends, at the start of this new year, we can and should celebrate our successes as a nation while conceding the things that are not yet where we want them to be. And yes, much work remains to be done. Government's immediate priority is to deal with some of the persistent and nagging and niggling problems that are irritants for all of us. Reinforcing the basics must be a priority. Aged and aging infrastructure is therefore a challenge that we must get on top of. In our first term in pursuing our mission-critical agenda, this government was confronted with multiple infrastructural issues which were all at crisis level. Let me remind you, they included the state of the roads, the water supply and distribution, the garbage collection, the public transport, the Bridgetown and South Coast sewage systems, to name a few. And while we reaped relatively early success in wrestling these issues to the ground, and while we have ensured that these issues have gone in a way that no longer are with us, my friends, let us recognize that we are at a situation where government's immediate priority is literally to be able to move them. Our roads continue to be a concern. Like you, the Cabinet and myself drive on this country's roads. We do so along with other members of Parliament and other members of your family. There is no doubt that they need attention. Recent heavy and unseasonal rains have caused damage to the road and have made it difficult to actually carry out the repair work over the last few months in a timely way. When I speak about the climate crisis, I don't speak so in a vacuum. I speak so because it is real. So that let us believe that even though we are doing roads, that climate crisis, and in particular the heavy rains of the last few months, caused us serious concern. They were unseasonal, and the convection rain are things to which we are not accustomed. But it is what it is. Without prejudice, therefore, to the Chinese Scotland District Program and the CAF Roads Program, both of which focus on reconstruction of roads, the government will now add a new mill and pave road repair program to address the state of the island's entire road network, where the challenge of the number of potholes has significantly compromised road quality. Red Plastic Bag warned us almost 30 years ago to watch for the holes. and we took that warning very seriously. But regrettably, because Barbados has such an extensive road network, the obligations are huge on us. The pothole problem for us must stop being a problem, in the same way that we must also focus on the paving of village and tenantry roads where people live, and not just highways and byways. The new mill and pave program, which will be outsourced to the private sector, will be worth approximately $30 million and will cover about 45 kilometers and will be undertaken between now and the end of this financial year on March 31st. That 45-kilometer targeted mill and pave program is separate and apart from an extensive pothole repair program which will be undertaken as a matter of priority to cover those potholes that are clearly not part of the 45-kilometer mill and pave program. We will replace the mains and fix drainage to new standards where necessary, even in that program. Our reality in this climate crisis is that we must work twice as hard in the dry season to compensate for the time that we will lose in the rainy season. In the first 6 months of last year, our rainfall was half what it was in the 30-year average. And in the last few months of last year, you could not find 3 days straight that did not have serious rain affecting the capacity to do outdoor work. Our reality has therefore changed, and we must make hay while the sun is shining. Be assured, my friends, the new road construction program, therefore, will be designed to be climate resilient. And you will hear more about these programs in the coming weeks from the Deputy Prime Minister. With respect to water woes, these too must become a thing of the past. But this is an ongoing mission and a moving target because much of our infrastructure is more than a century old, as we've said. To date, the central government has provided the Barbados Water Authority over the last 3 years with significant subventions in a way that has never happened before. 2 years at 30 million and this year at 20 million, allowing us to be able to undertake other projects and without prejudice to the grant money of another 80 million that we have now secured for the Barbados Water Authority. We've continued to install new mains, we've continued to build new reservoirs, we've provided independent power generation to almost all of our reservoirs, and I'm advised by this year all will have independent power generation. This has resulted in improvements in the worst affected communities like St. Joseph. However, there are other communities that are still awaiting their fix. And as I've had to say in the parish speak, from month to month, it can't all happen at one time, but we will continue. As a result, during the course of this year, we will continue to fix these efforts at the community, focused on community relief, especially in addressing the problem of brown water, now being experienced not only with districts in St. Lucie, but also more recently in St. George. Let us accept, however, that Barbados has been classified by the United Nations as one of the most water-scarce countries in the world. Not now, but for some time. But we must now ensure that every one of us must make the effort to conserve, to use water-saving devices, sensor-triggered taps, or those which shut off quickly and automatically. Our water challenges are made more so by the climate crisis. It is up to all of us, my friends, to have household water management plans, to not waste water, and to treat every drop of water as if it is precious, because it really is. Water is, in a real sense, the new oil. And this is the reason why we will focus on the establishment of the Water Academy this year and continue to source more grants and more concessional loans, as the scale of the problem can destabilize our public finances and compromise our future development if we are not careful. The reality is, even if we had all the money in the world, the disruption caused by the state of the infrastructure would mean that we would still need at least 15 years to replace our entire water infrastructure in this country. It was put down over decades, a century ago. And then, my friends, there's been the issue of sick buildings and general maintenance. It is clear that the poor maintenance of buildings, including the inadequate servicing of air-conditioned units, further compromised, I'm told, by the Senior Minister for Infrastructure, by the ashfall that we had in 2021 and the extreme heat that we have seen in 2021 and 22. All of these things have built on top of poor maintenance to create a perfect storm. In both the public and private sector, we are facing conditions that are seriously impacting our workers. Indeed, in the last year, some 38 buildings owned not just by government, but also those by private persons were temporarily closed at different points over the course, as I said, of the last year. The government proposes to put in place specialist units utilizing private sector and public sector teams to carry out corrective action and continued property maintenance. These plans must be executed and adhered to by all. On the issue of healthcare, I know that many of you are concerned. And believe you me, it is on our front burner. The Queen Elizabeth Hospital will receive a capital injection of $130 million to replace aging equipment and to acquire new pieces of important equipment like an MRI and like a linear accelerator for cancer treatment, and in this year, 2024. We believe that these pieces of equipment, the ones that I just mentioned, for example, will be available for the institution for the very first time. They never had an MRI or a linear accelerator. The first $65 million has already been settled, and we anticipate that the second phase of the $65 million will be settled shortly. And both of these have been secured without a government guarantee. Phase 3 of the accident and emergency renovations is almost completed, and may I remind you that when phase 3 is completed, there is some work that still has to be done in the existing A&E as a result of experiences learned since the COVID pandemic. Those refurbishments, I'm told, will finish before the middle of the year. In addition, however, the planned expansion of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital will also be addressed and will be completed during 2024 to 2025, ensuring that we start physical works before the end of this same 24 to 2025 financial year. There will also be a renewed focus on the polyclinics, where our healthcare workers are the first line of defense in primary care delivery, especially in our fight against NCDs. And we have heard many complain about the state of the polyclinics. These polyclinics will benefit from upgrades over the next 3 years, refurbishment, and indeed new construction in 2 instances. The needs for additional staff at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and the polyclinic, however, are also being met immediately. With respect to the seasonal issue of dengue, we have already started an intensive dengue mosquito control plan, the components of which have been increased, and continued fogging targeted at the adult mosquitoes is taking place. We are also putting in place other measures to address the elimination of stagnant water and bush around the island. The Ministry of Health is in discussion on initiatives as well to eliminate in the medium term the Aedes aegypti mosquito through the technology that exists, recognizing that this mosquito carries the dengue, chikungunya, and Zika virus that threatens life and causes severe illness to many. Nevertheless, my friends, you know I can talk to you straight. It is critical that we as Bajans accept that this battle must be fought not just by the actions of our government, but by the actions of each and every household and business in this country. The continuous rains that we were having mean increased collection of water, especially in areas where people are keeping bulky waste and other receptacles in their yards. But also with plants. I discovered in my garden I had a plant that was carrying water, and I had to take those plants out the garden. There has to be vigilance and increased public education for all of us in order to minimize for the spread of dengue. And Bajans should remember that the public health inspectors can and will find households where mosquitoes are breeding in stagnant water and where those households fail to heed the instructions of the public health inspector to deal with the stagnant water. The legislation that I've mentioned to you for some time is finally ready. That legislation that places responsibility on property owners for the maintenance of overgrown lots will be laid in Parliament when Parliament resumes later this month. So everyone be on guard and be on notice. If you own land, you got a responsibility to take care of it. And you can't just benefit from the capital appreciation that you expect it to give you. With respect to garbage collection, we know that there have been some challenges, and we have already announced to the public the additional trucks that have been procured and the ones that are on the way. And we thank the Maria Holder Trust also for also assisting in this respect, but the government of Barbados has bought as well and will continue to buy. It is our intention to undertake the route optimization plan, and the workers' incentive that I referred to and asked the SSA to settle is also being prepared for negotiations with the unions and the workers. It is our goal, my friends, to build up over time to a minimum of 2 weekly collections in every community in the country. 2 weekly connections. It's not beyond us, and we shall do it. With respect, however, to the dengue problem, I've asked the SSA to extend a bulky waste collection program for the month of January to ensure that we use not just the public trucks, but also private trucks. So Bajans who didn't get to finish cleaning around the house at Christmas you're going to get the chance to continue to do it between now and the end of January, because the life that you may be saving is yours or one of your families. Let us keep the place clean and remove all receptacles that can gather water. Government can do its part, but you have to do your part too. And as I said, when we work together, we achieve things together. And let me go now to the cost of living. Let me remind you too of some things, and let me show you how we can continue. We know that most of our inflation is imported, and we continue therefore in the course of the last 2 years to have placed continued emphasis on reducing the cost of living while enhancing, for example, food security and sovereignty by myriad measures. People must be able to eat and afford basics in life. These things therefore ensured that we made additional effort even after the prices protocol went, to be able to put an arrangement in place with the poultry sector to keep prices below that where they would otherwise be, in spite of the loss of poultry during the heated months, in very hot months, and in spite also of difficulties with the quality of feed. In addition to that, the government has a continued commitment to increase the disposable income of Bajans. In 2019, we did extensive tax reform to put more money in people's pockets. And we ensured that in addition to that, we also last year year before last, put in place the expanded basket of goods and food items benefiting from tax reductions. We put in place the capping of the value-added tax for energy imports at the equivalent of $80 per barrel, and this is to affect gasoline, diesel, and kerosene. And that cap remains even as we speak, even though the price of oil has been largely over $80 per barrel for the entire period of time. We have also kept the cap on the VAT on electricity bills for the first 150 kilowatts of electricity, even though it was only intended to be a 6-month measure. And as I said, in 2019, the government put considerable income tax reductions and increases in reverse tax credit funds for almost all workers in this country. And indeed, we did not remove a single cent of those income tax concessions or reverse tax credits, in spite of going through a pandemic when we were put under acute pressure to fill the gap when the private sector and small businesses and households could not do that. In spite of all of that, my friends, in this last year, you saw us also make available the concession that there shall be no land tax for the first $300,000 of property value, and that led to tens of thousands of Barbadians being taken off of the land tax roll. My friends, all of this was to increase disposable income, recognizing that not only can we try to control prices, but that we needed to make sure that individual households would have access to greater levels of income to go forward. In addition to this, when we came to office in the first few months, and under the chairmanship actually when Senator Cummins was chairman of the Barbados Port Authority, I met along with her and the then minister to meet with the stevedoring firms to indicate that this practice was an anachronism in a modern economy, and that it led to increased prices being borne by consumers and producers. We agreed with them that there would be a transition period, and that transition period came. It was to have been 2 years, and we extended it because of COVID, and indeed it eventually came. Accordingly, those negotiations therefore led to a new regime, and in April of last year, 2023, the Bridgetown Port announced a 10% reduction in container-related port charges. I have last week consulted again with the chair and management of the Barbados Port Authority, and have learned that they will shortly introduce another reduction in those container-related charges. And that reduction will now be in the form of 7.5%, and I will ask my office and the Bridgetown Port to share with you what those reductions look like in practical terms. We are not satisfied, however, that the full extent of these reductions have been passed on to the end consumers and customers. And hence, we will invite the consumer protection bodies nationally, along with the Ministry of Commerce, to monitor with a hawk's eye the businesses that are passing on these reductions and savings, to share with the public. I am not using a stick, I am using a carrot, and we will help the public learn who are those businesses that have done the right and decent thing and passed on the charges, passed on the savings, to the members of the public. The information will be shared with the public, and then you, the members of the public, will decide where you want to make your purchases. But the intention must be for the consumer and the customer to benefit from the reduction in these port charges. In less than a year, there will have been a 17.5% reduction on all container port charges in this country. And you and I both know that the majority of goods that come in, that we use, are in fact coming into the country through containers. In recent months, there's also been considerable contention within the tourism and hospitality sector. A series of meetings, it's no secret, have been held between the union and the Barbados Hotel Tourism Association with attempt to resolve the difficulties. These meetings were initially chaired by myself and thereafter by the Ministers of Tourism and the Ministers of Labor. The reality is that the meetings were rough. I'm not going to tell you otherwise. And the debates between the two sides have been robust. Nevertheless, over the course of those meetings, the government indicated that as a result of these discussions, we will be bringing legislation that will establish minimum standards for tourism and hospitality workers in Barbados that mirror the collective agreement that has guided this sector for decades. I remind us of the mantra of the government that we announced within less than 3 weeks of being sworn into office in 2018. Share the burden, share the bounty. Agreeing to amendments to the Severance Payments Act was a sacrifice that the workers made, and it saved the industry. It saved the hotels, it saved restaurants from bankruptcy. It saved the Severance Payments Fund. This was among some of the most difficult discussions we have had in government since coming to office. And this was the burden that the workers in the tourism and hospitality sector agreed to carry. They are now, my friends, entitled to benefit from the minimum protection, from the protection, I should say, of minimal conditions as workers, in the same way that hoteliers benefit every week from tax concessions from the government of Barbados. I cannot address every single priority today, unless you want me to spend the whole day talking with you, and today's a pudding and sauce day still, and I want some and you want some. We will be updating on new policy initiatives for which initial public discourse has commenced over the course of the last year. This ranges from education transformation to a place for every child in nursery school, as we've announced, to the establishment of the University College of Barbados. And those conversations will continue. There's the creation of a new family services department that has been the subject of consultations with stakeholders for almost 2 years, as well as the building out of the recently announced One Family initiative that I urge all Barbadians to get on board with, because if 4 out of every 5 are above the poverty line, we can help the one and pull the one out of poverty. In addition, there will be consultations and continued work around the recently announced Urban Renewal and Pit Toilet Eradication Program that I told you that we will be getting support from the Saudi Development Fund to undertake in a comprehensive way in Greater St. Michael. And of course, last year we had 2 national consultations towards a new criminal justice framework, and that new suite of legislation will be before Parliament within the first 3 to 4 months of this year. In addition to this, a new immigration bill will shortly come to Cabinet that will allow us to revise an act that has been there for over 50 years. We also anticipate shortly the receipt from the Social and Environmental Committee of Parliament, the new standing committee, a report on the child justice and child protection legislation. And then, of course, we expect this year the receipt of the various reports from the Constitutional Reform Commission, the Parliamentary Reform Commission, and the new committee that has just been established to review national symbols and emblems and the celebration of national activities as a new republic. We also have already received the report on the Commission on Persons with Disabilities, as also the report dealing with the People's Assemblies. And we are committed to reviewing and implementing aspects, if not all, of those reports as necessary and as desirable. Only yesterday, it was confirmed that Barbados will host the media center and a large number of games for Cricket World Cup 2020, the T20 tournament. The third largest global sporting games is cricket. And those finals will now culminate at the iconic Kensington Oval. That makes us all very proud as Barbadians that in less than 20 years, we are now hosting the third global finals in cricket, which is the third most popular sport in the world, on a country that is 166 square miles. This, as I said to former cricketers and to the heads of government, cricket is in our DNA. And while this was only publicly announced yesterday, the truth is we have been preparing for this for the last 2 months in anticipation that there was a distinct possibility that it might be ours. We learned to prepare and be ready. And once again, I now say to you, as a family of Bajans, we will welcome the world to our shores very shortly. And as with every big family event, we must ensure that we put our best foot forward. This will be an excellent dry run for the We Gathering next year, when parish by parish, we have now invited all Bajans to come home in 2025, recognizing that 2025 represents 400 years since the landing of the British that led to the modern settlement of our nation. You will hear more about that as we go forward. So my friends, in 2024, government policy will remain focused on sustaining the momentum in economic growth, maintaining healthy foreign reserves, further strengthening our fiscal position, increasing the number of employed people, and ensuring the continued trajectory of improving debt indicators while confronting the reality of a declining population. To achieve these objectives, government reforms will step up the restructuring program for state-owned enterprises, further strengthen fiscal performance, together with stronger revenue mobilization, as we have done recently with our recent corporate tax reform. Increasing investment from all quarters, not just those with a lot of money, but everybody who has a little savings that they want a little more than 0.001% from the bank account from. We are going to help sensitize you and train you, because investment is important, and as I keep saying, cash is not wealth. And we need to be able to ensure that you can invest, whether it is land or shares, in order to be able to have something that can grow in value and that can be passed on from generation to generation. This is necessary for the continued robust growth, and this is what the BERT program too is based on: growth and investment. Public investment will also continue to focus on improving our infrastructure and enlarging the training opportunities to increase the number of skilled workers. Our greatest fear is that we will have a need for a number of skilled workers that we cannot find within our geographical boundaries, and that is why the government has implemented the Construction Gateway program 18 months ago, as well as is now doing many of these training programs in the digital and ICT sector, because those jobs are available globally without you having to leave the rock. In addition, improving business conditions with the establishment of Business Barbados, as we have announced recently when I addressed the Chamber of Commerce, is an important priority of government policy in order to let us tackle the bureaucratic delays in the investment process and stronger domestic investment promotion activity to complement, therefore, the work that is already being done by Invest Barbados and Export Barbados. I genuinely believe that Business Barbados will make a difference to the quality of the ecosystem of doing business in this country, and I look forward to its functioning within the next few months. Accordingly, my friends, there will also be, against that backdrop of all of these things, a comprehensive update in Parliament during the estimate sessions that will start in 4 weeks' time, to ensure that there is continuous and rigorous updates on state-owned enterprise reform, which was badly delayed, as we all know, by the COVID-19 pandemic, the performance of the productive sectors, which I can't get into in full detail today, and the transition to the renewable energy industry, much of which you've heard in recent debate as Parliament closed just before Christmas, and on the expansion of our housing program beyond the number of houses that have been built last year, recognizing that if we are to reach the 2,000 houses per year, the industrial process that we are putting in place is critical. And indeed, during those estimates debates, you will also receive a comprehensive update on the large number of capital projects. There are over 170 capital projects that the senior minister briefed all of the senior ministers, the deputy prime minister and myself on yesterday, that are at various stages of development and planning. My friends, much is happening. Let me address, however, the governance issues as well. This government has tried to improve communication, transparency, and governance. You see me in the Parish Speaks every month. These issues remain important elements in building public trust. And I thank those public officers and parliamentarians who come and recognize that the people need to be there. In terms of overall governance, however, we still need to fine-tune aspects of our operations so that we may be even more effective in achieving our goals. As I said, it's not been perfect, but we are going in the right direction and we're making serious progress. And we're doing so at a time when the world is facing grave challenges. And we pray that war will not break out in the Middle East, because that is the last thing that all of us in the world needs. But as any good captain or pilot knows, when there are issues and turbulence, you have to adjust the flight path, even if ever so slightly. It is against the backdrop of the major transformational initiatives which this government is pursuing that I now seek to make some small adjustments. Therefore, in accordance with the Constitution of Barbados, I have met with Her Excellency the President of Barbados, the Most Honourable Dame Sandra Mason, this morning, and I've proposed, therefore, the following changes to the Cabinet as of January 8th on Monday morning. The Honourable Marcia Cadell shall assume responsibility for the Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology. Mr. Chad Blackman, who is currently serving as a special advisor to the Director General of the International Labour Organization, has been invited to come back home and shall become Minister in the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Investment. For the avoidance of doubt, Mr. Ryan Strawn remains Minister in the Ministry of Finance. The Minister of State, Dr. Sonia Brown, as many of you have heard already this morning, indicated to me earlier this week her desire to return to the backbench for personal and professional reasons. But she has agreed to assume responsibility as a national wellness champion and will chair the coordination of government's wellness programs, the various commissions that we have in this area, to ensure appropriate synchronization and achievement, because this is a battle that will be won not in the ministries of Barbados, but in the households and communities of Barbados. Minister Davidson Ishmael will now serve as Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness, supporting the Senior Minister, Senator Jerome Walcott. Minister Sandra Husbands, who has done an outstanding job in foreign trade, is now being asked to turn her attention as Minister of State to go to the Ministry of Education, where she will assume responsibility for higher education and technical and vocational training, allowing the substantive Minister of Education, Kay McConney, to focus on the vast work of educational transformation. This is a consequential matter that will affect all Barbadians and therefore requires the full support of all to ensure that we make these changes for the benefit of this nation. Indeed, I say that it is unlikely that my government or the next government will benefit from these changes, but the government 7 years from now and onwards will benefit. There will also be minor adjustments to the portfolios for better realignment. I have been covering, as you know, climate resilience and sustainability in my office with Senator Chantal Munro-Knight, and the Barbados Water Authority will now come in there to better align its governance and management procedures with climate resilience portfolio, recognizing that that is where the climate battle for us first starts, more than even hurricanes, in water distribution and water supply. The Urban and Rural Development Commission and its successor body, which used to be in the office of the Prime Minister, will now move to the Senior Minister in charge of planning and the coordination of capital projects, the Honourable William Duguid. And the Building Standards Authority, for the avoidance of doubt, will go back to the Ministry of Public Works. There was confusion constitutionally as to where it was found, and this is critical because we will only be able to meet the needs of becoming a climate resilient Barbados if we finally get the codification of those building standards across the country. In the Senate, Mr. Chad Blackman, having accepted the offer to serve in the cabinet, will now be appointed a senator and will replace Senator Lorenzo Harewood. Mr. Reverend Charles Morris will also be appointed as senator to replace Senator Shanika Roberts-Odle. There are also a number of changes to our diplomatic representation in foreign jurisdictions. I've asked Ambassador Noah Lynch to demit office as of January 15th this year, and I have asked him to assume the very serious responsibility for the important task of chairing this country's effort to host the world here in the Cricket World Cup finals in June of this year. This is a mammoth responsibility and for which we only have 6 months, and I'm satisfied that Ambassador Lynch's expertise will guide us safely with respect to those who have already been doing excellent work on the ground in preparations. Accordingly, I have asked Mr. Vic Fernandes to assume the position of Ambassador to the United States of America, and those processes will now be put in place to seek agreement. Ms. Sharon Marshall will be appointed as Ambassador to the Republic of Cuba. Mr. Cleviston Haynes, previously Governor of the Central Bank, has been appointed as Ambassador to Ireland. And Mr. Lorenzo Harewood is now to be the new Consul General in New York. Mr. Oral Holder has already been appointed, as you know, as Deputy High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. My friends, we will be announcing further changes to the diplomatic appointments over the next 2 months. I should advise that in May of this year, Barbados will be taking over from Ghana the chairmanship of the V20 countries of the world, vulnerable countries, a global partnership of 68 countries from Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, Latin America, and the Pacific, which are disproportionately impacted by the consequences of the climate crisis. It is proposed that Senator Ambassador Elizabeth Thompson, who is Barbados' Ambassador for Climate Change, Law of the Sea and Small Island Developing States, will assume responsibility as my Sherpa for the period of time that Barbados will chair this most critical of groups on the global landscape. This appointment should be seen as supporting the transformative agenda that the government has framed for our development. Particularly, it is driven by my personal need to broaden the participation of competent persons who can assist me in sharing the burden of international responsibility. Indeed, our outstanding participation internationally has made the difference in our capacity to attract the kind of international assistance to overcome many of the challenges that have caused others in similar circumstances to crumble. We have assembled a great team, and I want to thank Professor Avinash Prasad, who has served and who is now going to the Inter-American Development Bank to advise the president of that bank on these matters of climate crisis. But at the same time, citizens should appreciate that there are times when there is simply no suitable candidate for someone who carries a high responsibility to lead. My oversight of the transformation, however, on the ground is always important, and the external interactions that I may have will not at any time take me away from local issues. As Sherpa, Ms. Thompson will do some of the heavy lifting for me, but rest assured that when I am outside, even when I have to go outside, technology has made it possible for oversight to be maintained every minute and every hour, even if the victim is asleep, as you know. Rest assured, pun not intended, I will not take my eyes away from all that is happening in Barbados, even when I am off island. For as I have said, technology is that game changer, so much so that you can hear my voice through technology, irrespective of the fact that you're not at a Lara court even now. I would like to thank all for their service, all who have served, and all who have served not just in the cabinet, in the Senate, and those who have represented our country at the very highest levels diplomatically. We owe you all a debt of gratitude for your service, and we thank you for your continued commitment to the cause of Barbados and to the government and people of this country. I also want to thank the members of my parliamentary party and cabinet who continue to lift the heavy weight. I say all of the time that when you signed up for this, you really didn't expect that you were going to have these 5 years that we have seen. My friends, in normal times, the work of the cabinet is complex and stressful. It requires confidentiality, and the level of the responsibility is not always fully appreciated by those who have not known what it is to lead or serve in a country and to make decisions for the well-being of people. In these last few years, there has been serious global uncertainty driven by an existential climate crisis, a global pandemic, domestic hurricane and ashfall, increasing conflict in the world, including the threat of it in our own region, rapid digitization in the world, and a quickly evolving labor market that is unfolding before our eyes, and anxiety on the part of workers after the period of shutdown of restricted movement for 3 years in COVID. We need much to anchor ourselves in our faith. Indeed, our national anthem acknowledges the power of God in guiding our national affairs. In our 2018 manifesto, the BLP committed to appointing a spiritual advisor who will give spiritual guidance and prayerful support to the cabinet, collectively and individually, and to the cabinet secretary. The role will require availability to cabinet as necessary, and since the appointee is will usually be one who is already serving congregations, we have chosen to appoint 2 people, recognizing that 52 weeks a year, 365 days a year, you never know when the need for that support will come. I want to thank both the Reverend Joel Cumberbatch of the Wesleyan Church and Reverend Dr. Adrian Smith of the Moravian Church for agreeing to serve in the capacity as spiritual advisors to the Cabinet of Barbados. We are breaking new ground. I'm concerned that we need to strengthen also our moral and religious leadership in our country, and that government must build new partnerships with the church in addressing social challenges. I therefore very much hope that the example that is now being set by these appointments will be followed by other institutions and corporate entities. And I fully anticipate that there will also be discussions during the course of this year and ongoing where we as a mature society and family must come together and sit down and not talk at each other, but talk with each other. And that is the leadership. I cannot guarantee agreement on all issues, but I can guarantee conversation and maturity. On the matter of enhanced accountability, I'm also putting in place the delivery of a formal monthly report to the country by various ministries on a rotating basis, such that at least twice a year ministries can account to people. I too will account to the country twice a year. And these conversations with the country, like Paris Speaks, where MPs and I already meet with you, will be informal, no holds barred communications in which we will report and listen to you, the people of this country, and respond to your needs and wishes. When we got the mandate that you gave us in 2018 and 2022, I promised you that we would continue to listen, and we have been doing so. And anytime you feel that we're not, just remind me. But I know in our heart of hearts that is our desire, and it has been our action for the most part. Let me just pause, however, to make some observations about 2 matters that have dominated the news and social media in the last few days. It is now common knowledge that the Deputy Prime Minister was sent a check by a company. The money was intended to support her efforts in bringing Christmas hampers and, yes, festive cheer to those in her communities in her constituency. A recent statement focused on actions of soliciting and accepting gifts that would lead to dismissal of public officers from the public service under the general orders. I have spoken to the Deputy Prime Minister, and she has been very clear in her response. 2 points are critical. 1, the check was not solicited by her, nor did she have prior notice of this delivery. And 2, my friends, the check was not cashed. If I was in another place, I would say to you on both counts, case closed. That the leader of the Democratic Labour Party immediately called for the Deputy Prime Minister's dismissal is truly understandable, as he himself knows well the threats that he is currently facing in his own party. And while it may be said that misery loves company, I want to remind him that he's on his own this time yet again, because there is no company for him on this matter of dismissal. The truth is that what he is really looking for is a political equalizer. But my friends, in the words of the great Robert Nesta Marley, you draw a bad card, not this one. On both counts, as I said, this matter is closed. There has been no criminal behavior, there has been no breach on the part of the Deputy Prime Minister of any law, and there is nothing that merits her dismissal. Indeed, for those, and I say quietly, for those who query and want to query why there has been no proclamation of the Integrity in Public Life Act, let us be very clear. This act has only been there in place for 5 months. The act requires the establishment of a new commission. The establishment of any new entity after the passage of legislation takes considerable time, especially in small states, where the same people are doing and are involved in multiple jobs and activities. We have seen it, my friends, with the establishment of the Anti-Corruption Authority. We've seen it with the new Civil Aviation Authority, both of which have passed Parliament more than 18 months ago. There are a series of complex procedures for establishing the Integrity Commission, and indeed, those series will be put fully in place, and I will ask the Attorney General to address them so that you'll be in no doubt as to the steps that are being taken. In the case of civil aviation and anti-corruption, more than 18 months has elapsed since the passage of that legislation, and those entities are not yet fully operational. This is our reality, and I'm not going to fool you. I'm going to give you the facts, because no one was able ever to pass that legislation before, and even when it failed in the last term, this government could have walked away from it. We chose not to. We remained persistent, and indeed the legislation is there now. I have equally said I expect that there are going to be challenges, and those challenges will come from those who are willing to serve in a small society. And we know that that is not going to be a walk in the park, and we have to continue to monitor its impact on the governance of the nation. But I trust that that will be a matter that future generations will have to pass judgment on. But above all else, the Integrity in Public Life Act is only one part of an ecosystem that we have introduced to strengthen transparency and accountability. We've passed at least 6 other bills that are intended to help us in that area. And we have done all of this while fighting the greatest economic, social, environmental, and demographic battles that our country, Barbados, has faced over the course of the last 5 years, unparalleled at any other time since independence. But we did not use that as an excuse not to produce and settle this ecosystem. I do accept that the broader debate does raise important issues, such as the funding of political activities. And I will await the recommendations, any as such as they're given, on this and other related matters to be made by the Parliamentary Reform Commission, which, as I said earlier, is due to deliver its report later this year. The other matter of some contention relates to the use of a diplomatic passport by someone who has been charged. This matter of the use of diplomatic passports, regrettably, was changed in 2017, and it has been brought to my attention that the broadening of the categories who could assume and hold diplomatic passports was done by the previous government in 2017. I have asked the Minister of Home Affairs, under whose jurisdiction the issue of diplomatic passports falls, to bring the changes to Cabinet to tighten it where it properly should be. My sister, if she were to live with me, should not be able to get a diplomatic passport as a big hardback woman, and therefore we need to be able to ensure that only those adults who are dependent physically and mentally will do so, and of course children who are minors. Enough said, my friend, on these matters. Barbadians work and achieve best, as I keep saying, when we work together in the national interest. This is a tough time all over the world. You heard me say I'm worried about the fact that we are at risk of war, more and more war. But the challenges, my friends, are not beyond us. We are on the brink of a major breakthrough, and we must keep pushing forward, in the words of Marvey, with hard work and sacrifice in the interest of the wider success of all of us. We can and we must share the burden so that together we will truly enjoy the bounty and the benefit. And I'm going to hold fast to that principle as leader of this country. This calls for us to respect each other, to be courteous and kind to each other, and to value the lives of other Bajans, and others for that matter. It requires each of us to go to school, to work, to go to church, to go to Sunday school, to be involved in the sports and cultural areas and arenas in our country, and every sphere of national activity, to participate and be active citizens, to give of our best every single day. We might not always make it every day, but if you fall down, get back up. When a baby falls down on the floor, just get back up and go, because that's how they learn to walk, and that's how they learn to run. If we want things to be better for all of us, we, you and I, are the ones who must make it better. There's too much fake news and there's too much distraction. We must take care of our land and our ocean. We must keep it clean and beautiful. For our anthem is also Beautiful Barbados, that song that we always sing. We must love who we see in the mirror, as Lil Rick tells us, and know that we are not only entitled to rights from our country, but we must have a responsibility to our country and to fellow Bajans as active citizens of the new republic. We must be ensuring that we can commit to ourselves being healthy and to keep each other safe. We have to work together to eliminate poverty. You ain't gonna do it by government alone or you alone or the private sector alone. All of us together to eliminate poverty and to make our people owners in their own land, not just tenants. And we must not be left behind in this global digital revolution. If not, we will be viewed as illiterate in the world. We must see, we must hear, and we must feel each other. These simple things that I just called you is just a Bajan interpretation of the very lofty goals of Mission Barbados. That's all Mission Barbados is. And this must be our purpose, to build a better life for our people and to build the best Barbados possible. I can't fool you. The uphill push in 2024 will not always be easy, but the sun don't shine every day. But we must make hay when the sun is shining. And I cannot tell you that if everybody break for themselves, that we will all get through. Because you and I both know that that is not the case. We succeed, my friends, when we work together, when we share the pot together, and successive generations of Barbadians knew this. We are Bajans. Barbados is ours. We must make it the best we can for all of us. The Republic is ours to fashion, and every one of us is and must be a builder of Barbados. We've got to carry each other, and we must care for one another. My government will do its part, and I'm appealing to all of you to do yours. In spite of all of the global uncertainty and angst, let us make 2024 the year for Barbados. Let us prepare to receive our brothers and sisters in 2025 with a level of pride and knowing that we are letting them come back to the best that we can let them come back to. From my government to this nation, from my family to yours, from me to every single one of you, Happy New Year, and may God bless Barbados and Barbadians everywhere. Thank you.